This is the Philadelphia Orchestra's most recent performance in China. In the Grand Concert Hall of the National Performing Arts Center in downtown Beijing. Music is at the heart of it all, winning fans in China. Though the artistry of the Philadelphia Orchestra carried away the audience, there are a few sitting in the gallery who enjoy the moment of music more than most for its historical significance. Ambassador Nicholas Platt is already in his late 80s. He has been to China many times, starting from the last century, facilitating the first ever performance of the Philadelphia Orchestra in China in the 1970s. When the ice between Washington and Beijing began to thaw, Eugene Ormandy, the orchestra's conductor then, one of the most legendary and charismatic conductors of his time, did not want to miss that unprecedented opportunity. But for an America and a China, which did not even talk to each other for decades due to the Cold War, and a China which was still in the middle of the Cultural Revolution, you bet things were hard to arrange. Ambassador Platt knows all the inside stories, as he was literally part of them and arguably shaping them. 1973, you were instrumental in making sure the first ever performance of the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra to China. You were young at the time.
36 years old.
Oh my God, think about it.
Yeah.
What was it like? The negotiation process difficult with the Chinese authorities?
Yes, it was a very, very painstaking. And we had all kinds of details, etc., which were set in place. But there was one big issue that was not resolved. And that was which of Beethoven's symphonies should be played. And the Chinese side very much wanted Beethoven's Sixth Symphony. And
did they tell you why?
They didn't. But it was up to me to explain to Mr. Ormandy why. In any case, he said, I don't like that symphony and I'm not going to play it. And
as an artist, that was very determined.
And I said to him, Maestro, you know, the authorities in China have given us a strong request from the very top to play Beethoven's Sixth. He said, you know I hate that symphony. And I said, well, let me try and explain to you why it is that the Chinese love the Pastoral Symphony. First of all, the Chinese love program music. In other words, music that's about things, places, scenery, etc., etc. And Beethoven's Sixth is one of the great pieces of program music. It's all about life in the countryside. And here you have the Chinese Communist Party coming to power on the back, and that sounds to them like the revolution. And then you have a big, peaceful fifth movement ending of the symphony, and that represents to the Chinese the victory of the Communist Party. Ormandy looked at me and he said, okay, well, when in Rome, I should do as the Romans wish. But you have to get me the scores. So I got 70 scores from Shanghai and 50 scores from Beijing. They were all marked up differently, but the orchestra knew the symphony cold, and they also knew to watch the maestro, and he played it. They played it very beautifully.
At the end of the day, did the maestro also enjoy that trip?
At the end of the day, when I said goodbye to the maestro, someone poked me and they said, you know, the maestro really doesn't need a plane to get back to the United States.
He could literally fly back.
He could just fly back.
Feeling very much elevated
yes.
throughout the process.
Yes.
Did you still remember, what was it like that this initiative to bring Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra to China was brought up?
Well, I think that the in the overall bigger picture, we found from our relations with the Soviet Union that music could play a very important role. And Van Cliburn and so forth had made a big impression on the Russians and so forth. So when we started up with China, I think the powers that be, which was not me, but they thought that music should be a part of this relationship. And I wasn't involved in the initial decision to bring the orchestra. This was done by President Nixon and Henry Kissinger. But I believe, and knowing Ormandy, I believe Ormandy lobbied very hard for this, and Ormandy usually got what he lobbied for.
Two things happening at the same time, I guess. One is this relationship at this initial stage with a performance coming from one of the most well-known symphony orchestras from the U.S.
Yes.
On a Chinese stage. You are also witnessing the maestro, Normandy, as well-known as he is, as charismatic as he is, literally having himself elevated almost into another world. So what was it like, this combination? And at the same time, you are a young diplomat. This is once-in-a-lifetime experience, in a way.
It was very exciting, and we had to, sort of start from scratch. Ormandy told me at the outset, I really don't like any food except for steaks and chickens, which are prepared by my wife, Gretel, who is a wonderful person. And so I don't think I'm going to come to any dinners. And I said, Maestro, look, if you don't have to eat what you don't want to eat, but you have to realize that all social life in China takes place around the dining room table. If you don't want to meet any Chinese, don't eat Chinese, don't come to dinner. But if you do come, then you'll meet people. And of course he came, and of course he loved the food, and he ate it very enthusiastically.
Did he eventually react to you? I mean, after this relatively difficult, challenging, but certainly rewarding trip, did he say anything to you?
He was very grateful, and my wife played a big role in this. She's knowledgeable about music, spoke good Chinese, was great looking, and Ormandy...
That wouldn't hurt?
Ormandy liked her, and Ormandy and his wife had a lot of questions about everyday life and things like that. We could try to answer them.
What question did he ask?
He was not, he still was, worried about reaction. And in the first concert, after the first number, which was, I think, a Haydn symphony, I was told that I had to go backstage immediately because the maestro was upset about the reaction. And I found him in backstage, and his wife was fanning him with a big towel, and he was saying, "They're so quiet, they're so quiet. I've never had such a
audience he was talking about.
Such a quiet reaction, and this isn't working. This is a disaster." And I said, "Now, maestro, relax. This is China. These people haven't heard a symphony orchestra for a long, long time. And they're very, circumspect about Americans, etc., etc. But I have to say that by Chinese standards, you've gotten a very strong ovation." So he quieted down.
Before you were rushing to Mr. Normandy's studio, I'm sure you were sitting audience, 1973, listening to the performance. Do you still remember what was going through your mind then?
Well, I was concerned, I was wondering about audience reaction. I was worrying about Ormandy's reaction. I was worrying about whether the orchestra itself was going to do all right. I already knew that the orchestra was extremely good at making friends with people, because we were staying at the Minzu Hotel, and the first concert was at the Minzu Concert Hall. But I came to see them the day after they had arrived, and there was a commotion outside and a big crowd and frisbees flying around. And the orchestra members had brought their frisbees and they were throwing them, and people in the street had never seen a frisbee before. They thought that was terrific. And from that moment, the two sides and the peoples really made up their minds that this was going to be a good thing.
It must be a very rewarding process for you as well. If you think back, the very first trip, Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra to China, the very first ice-breaking performance ever taking place between the two countries.
No, it's something that has changed my life too, because that relationship with the orchestra has gone on. And in 2010, when I was back in Shanghai and attending a concert given by the orchestra, people from the orchestra management side saw me and they asked me to come backstage afterwards. And I did, and I met the new president of the orchestra then, that she was wanting to revise the business plan of the orchestra to include China in a much more business-like way. Could I help her with that? And I said, sure. And so I've been doing that more and more intensively ever since. We developed over time was one that took into account the new realities in China.
Yes.
First of all, urbanization. There were now maybe almost 100 new concert halls in China. As each city was developing, they had to have a concert hall. Concert halls were all built, but the question was, now what do we do? How do we fill them? How do we manage them and so forth? And one of the services that we offered was to provide management training for people in China who wanted to get that. The other thing was you had a growing middle class that was enthusiastic about music, able to afford tickets, and anxious that their children, who all were taking music lessons and so forth, hear a great orchestra. And we started this program in 2012, and I was amazed at how young and enthusiastic the Chinese audiences were, and still are.
So it seems there's a lot of changes going on in this country.
Well, I think music is a great bridge between countries, and it's very unforced. It's very natural. People want to cross that bridge.
But Mr. Ambassador, things are always not necessarily as smooth as we always wish it to be. As you may know, there are some bumpy period of time existing between the two countries right now. Coming from where you were, 1973, even before the diplomatic relationship, knowing how much effort over the decades people, including yourself and your wife, put into it. How do you see the current realities?
I see the current realities as a continuum of change and friction. We've always had issues over the years. If you live Chinese-U.S. relations, you know that there are always going to be complications. I see the current complications as part of a continuum. We've been through this before. We'll deal with it. And I won't say that the relationship will not change. It will change. It's been changing since day one. Expect it to change, but expect over time for the two sides to make it clear that they need each other.
Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra this time to Beijing make a lot of people reminiscent of the wisdom and the courage as well as the goodwills many had and have been contributing from day one of this relationship.
Well, I was worried that the trade tensions between us and so forth might get in the way of cultural exchange between the two countries. And I came in January with other leaders of the orchestra to sort of sound things out and see how things were. And I found that the Chinese side was very anxious to have this visit take place. And I came to the conclusion that in times of turbulence, both sides are always looking for something they can agree on. And this seems to be one of them.
This is definitely one of them. Now, you don't have to negotiate the pieces of performance this time for the trip.
I don't.
You don't have to worry about which banquet to go to, whom to meet, whether there's a leadership performance anymore.
I don't, but we're going to play Beethoven's Sixth, I'll tell you that.
And how are you explaining that to Yannick this time, the metro now?
Oh, Yannick knows all these stories. And Yannick doesn't have the prejudice against Beethoven's Sixth that Ormandy had.
The Philadelphia Orchestra is one of the most preeminent music ensembles in the world. It is widely admired for its distinctive sound, and it is desired for its keen ability to go to your heart and to lead your imaginations with peerless artistic quality. Taking a peek into one of its rehearsals in Beijing, it is not difficult to be overwhelmed by its passion and devotion. Generations of talented musicians have worked to earn their place in this outstanding orchestra, including these two, Renard and David, who not only have stories to tell about music, but also about history. They were originally in the orchestra, which traveled to China in 1973. 1973.
Yes. We did not have anything to do with how this was set up, but they set it up for us, and it was really an incredible experience.
Yeah.
It was a very special thing, and it received a huge amount of news. I can remember for weeks beforehand hearing about it. It was in the papers, on the TV, on the radio. It was a major, major thing in Philadelphia for us.
Yeah.
And just a couple of weeks before they left, I got a call from our personnel manager, and he said that we would like to have you come to China. And I was really incredibly surprised and thrilled. And as soon as I hung up, I thought, oh, I don't even have a passport. So I called back, and he said, well, don't worry about it. We will take care of it, which they did. I had never been out of the United States. And I remember Beijing at that time was, so much smaller than it is now. And there was a lot of farmland. I can remember seeing people out working in it, and there were these wooden carts driven by these animals. And it was just, it was almost like a whole totally different world for me.
Yeah, in the center of town where we were staying, it was all, everybody riding bicycles. Very few cars.
I've never seen so many bicycles in my life. I mean, millions of them. At times during the day when everybody was leaving for work or something, it was literally a sea of bicycles. I've never seen anything like that anywhere in the world.
Holding a violin in your hand, of course, you remember the first time. You know, 23-year-old, you were telling me, and you knew this was historical. I mean, it's in China during the middle of the Cultural Revolution.
I mean, it was a very large audience, and we had gotten some information on their tradition, I guess, where at the end of a piece, they would applaud for us, and we were asked to applaud back to them.
Oh, did you do that?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Did you enjoy it?
Well, yes, it was quite a new experience.
You performed the Yellow River Concerto.
Yes.
For the very performance in China.
It wasn't like as I remember, the concertos that we are used to, you know, like Rachmaninoff or Tchaikovsky, Beethoven. This seemed more rhapsodic, but I mean, do you think?
Exactly. I was thinking exactly the same word.
Rhapsodic.
Yes, it was very melodic. It was very romantic in the harmonies. It was actually a lovely piece. The audiences reacted to it. And then when we returned from China, we played it in the United States.
Yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
How the audience
we
reacted?
made a recording.
Yeah, that's right. We made a recording. The audiences loved it. I mean, it's beautiful music. What's not to love?
when you came over here in 1973, that's a time when I didn't even get to see. So I envy you guys, in fact. But it was a critical juncture of change for China too. What was China like then compared to your perceptions?
My only perceptions, I had no perceptions of China whatsoever.
We all read about China in our history books, but to actually be here in '73, I mean, there wasn't the same buildup of industry, there wasn't the same buildup of hotels.
It was also very different from 1973 to 1993, about 20 years difference. I mean, it was like the whole world had changed here.
Yes.
In '73, everybody looked alike. They dressed exactly the same type of clothes, the same colors. Everybody had the same haircut. It was even difficult to tell the men from women. And then it was totally different. I've actually never seen a country change so much.
In 20 years.
And change so impressively and grow so astonishingly as China.
Yeah, absolutely.
After you performed for the very first time in China, 1973, then the relationship between China and the United States really taken off.
Oh.
Did you realize at the time when you were watching TV, reading the papers, I did something for this?
I was wondering, actually, after our first visit, if we were going to be invited back.
Yes, of course, everybody wondered that.
And then when so many years went by, I didn't know that we were ever going to come back. But I felt that other American orchestras would come.
And this is
China.
already your 12th time.
Yes.
Yes.
That really tells the story.
Yes. After 1993, then it became much more frequent.
I think we all felt that this was a momentous occasion for us, and it was an act that was very important, I think, for both the United States and for China. And particularly then when we came back in the 90s, we realized we've developed a very close relationship with so many people and so many organizations. It's one of our closest friendships. And it's very important for, I think, both the United States and hopefully for China also. I think it is.
Exactly. Of course, there are bumps as we speak. But I guess things are eventually going to get better.
Yes, they will.
Renard, David, what a pleasure seeing both of you.
Thank
you for everything you've been doing.
Thank you.
Both about music and about the friendship.
Thank you.
谢谢. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live on CGTN, and this is our special program, Let the Music Play, our exclusive with the Philadelphia Orchestra China Tour. Classical music has a renaissance of sorts in China. Children grow up trained in playing instruments. They are also having their idols of classical music in the country and beyond. Piano, trumpets, flutes, drums, you name it. But it is more than talent and skill. It is a way of appreciate life and an access to the best sounds of life. And this has put a new momentum of exchanges between the Philadelphia Orchestra and China. Well known for its contribution to its community in its host city, Philadelphia, and other places, the Philadelphia Orchestra in recent years has embraced its historic China legacy, becoming a cultural ambassador with new partnerships in China, helping hone the skills of young musicians and composers, bringing orchestral music through performances and master classes, even way out in the provinces. No one knows this better than Matthias Tarnopolsky, the president and CEO of Philadelphia Orchestra now. While he was doing rounds of interacting with all parties preparing for the orchestra's performance in Beijing, I caught up with him for a few minutes. At easy times, people wouldn't think about cultural exchanges. They just think, oh, okay, that's fine. You have a performance, that's wonderful. But at difficult times, this is one of the last straw people hold on to. What do you make of this interesting contrast?
I don't know I agree with you.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I think this idea of cultural exchange is in our orchestra's DNA. It happens at home in Philadelphia, in good times or bad. It happens in the state of Pennsylvania, around the country, and around the world whenever we travel. So this idea of connection, this idea of sharing music, this idea of being in a concert hall and all of us in the concert hall being equal in front of the music, that is true whatever's happening. I think in the more difficult moments, and this is where I think your question goes to, in more difficult moments, maybe there is an extra edge. Maybe there is just extra meaning, because here on a musical level, we can give word to thoughts and feelings that you can't express in writing or in conversation.
You always see tendency of people dragging the world down. More intense recently. But classical music has always been able to enlighten people and to lighten up the lights in people's heart. So how do you see the potential and the responsibility, in a way, of classical music in such a dramatically changing world?
I think music, all music, classical music especially, classical music by a group of musicians, that is the symphony orchestra, is ever more important. You know, the orchestra is a microcosm of the world. We have people...
Literally.
Literally. We have people from around the world of all ages with one unifying vision, though. You know, to play music as best as they can and to share it as widely as possible. I think classical music is a beacon of hope. I think it's a sanctuary. I think it's a place of celebration. I think being at the concert is one of the great, truly democratizing experiences in our society. We are all equal in front of a piece of music in the concert hall. And that's really important today. Classical music shows you the contrast between listening and hearing, between leading and following. It is about beauty and it is about truth. And each of us takes away something different from being in a concert hall. So I can't say that something that for me is a moment of peace may not be a moment of turmoil for someone else with listening to the same piece of music. But I can tell you that what classical music does is that it gives you that space to experience music written, you know, in the early 1700s or last month. You know, let's say, you know, be it by Bach or by Tandun, played by the same group of musicians, and it will touch your heart.
For this performance particularly, what would you consider as a success?
When I sit in the concert hall and the lights go down at the end, the success for me has so many different flavors. But to see people's faces as they leave the concert hall, to see that they're somehow changed by the experience, to see that they've had a moment of connection with people on the stage with whom they don't even share a language, very possibly. That's one really important measure of success.
While Matthias is busy dealing with all the behind-the-scenes work, Yannick, the music director of the Philadelphia Orchestra, was busy working with his team rehearsing on the stage. He's one of the biggest names now, not only in the classical music scene worldwide, but also being the third music director in the history of the Metropolitan Opera. Though it is a tradition for the world's best orchestras to work with talents from all over the world, Yannick's generation, though, is extremely fascinated by that and tries to bring out the best through every collaboration, which of course includes cooperation with Chinese musicians. When I was sitting with him on the stage in the concert hall of the National Theatre a few hours before his performance, he told me he's been to China countless times. He said it with a bright twinkle of light in his eyes. Philadelphia Orchestra has been really throughout history making things happen. The very first historic trip to China and opening the door between two great nations.
I always believe and will always believe that music is beyond everything else in the relations between humans. And not only humans, by the way. I think animals, I think even nature and plants. Music is part of an order of the universe which brings every element and every people together.
So inclusive.
It is very inclusive. And this is precisely why it's a language. And music stops when words fail. What you cannot express with words, music can let you express it. And this is why when it's more tense between countries or nations, it's not necessarily about talking or representing. Of course, when we come here, we represent our country, but it's more than this. We try to connect to the hearts of the people, and we feel welcomed by the people of China. And this is what moves me a lot, and this is why we keep doing it.
What was it like to be the conductor and the artistic director of this orchestra, this one of the best in the world, and you're walking in the footsteps of some of the biggest names ever in the field of music? What was it like? There must be a lot of... Are you nervous? Are you curious? Are you on a daily trip to find out?
A daily trip to find out. This is great. I love this because I think this is also our responsibility as musicians. So, of course, conductors, and when we are caretakers of such institutions with a long history, we are much smaller than the history of the institution, you know? The Philadelphia Orchestra has been blessed with very few conductors in the history. So it's now 119 years old because it was founded in 1900. And I'm only the number 8th as music director.
There we go. Congratulations, my friend.
So this is actually, you know, everybody spent a lot of time here with Philadelphia. And of course, when I was given that task, I was never nervous because I knew what I could bring, but I take it with a lot of sense of responsibility. I take it very seriously and with a lot of care. That I need to, it's a jewel that I'm taking care of for a few years and then will pass to the future.
That's a beautiful way of describing it. But you know, as a conductor with a busy schedule, not to mention you need to give the best artistic level every time with every performance in different genres. How would you enrich yourself?
Yeah.
How would you be able to break the mold that you yourself created not long ago? That's my question.
It's a beautiful question, and you're right that self-enrichment or self-cultivation is very, very, very important. In music, the short answer to this is that I feel that in music and art in general, what we do is express feelings that actually come from the life. And what is dangerous is that we're so much sometimes in the music that you forget to live. What is the key to this self-cultivation is to make sure that you still live. What does that mean? Simple things as to walk and watch the trees, the people, read a lot, books, and also just see nature, take time with my family, take time with my partner, take time with all the people, my friends.
People you love.
Yes, and this is, I was fortunate to have a great teacher of piano when I was a teenager. And she always told me this. I was 14 years old, and she would say, Yannick, the most important thing is to be well surrounded by the people so you can live. And I was looking at her, and you're 14-year-old, you want to be told how to put your fingers there. You don't want to be told about this, but now I understand what she meant. And it's so true.
And you got 1.4 billion people around you right now in China.
That's wonderful for me to go and discover. And there's another aspect. For the conductor, with such great ensembles and great musicians, constantly, every gesture I make has an impact. And I know immediately if what I do or what I ask, what I'm for, if the orchestra doesn't understand, or if it's not good, or it could be better, or if my idea is not natural. I get the immediate feedback, not verbally, but by the playing. But I hope I'm going to conduct until I'm 94, so I will have maybe another 50 years. And I know that I'm at the very beginning only of my journey. And for me, it's very important every day to wake up and be conscious of this.
It's a beautiful answer you give to a wonderful question, I guess. Before we go, Yannick, I do like you to share with us why you choose the repertoires this time.
Yeah.
Because we know it was quite a debate in 1973.
Yeah. So when we travel to China, we always want to bring the best of what we can do. What does that mean? It means many things, but I think the orchestra should represent somehow what we are working on back at home, and the new colors we discover and the new shades and emotions. We've been working a lot on Beethoven recently. We've been also working a lot every year on Sibelius and Schubert. So these were the three anchors. And then I wanted to combine things together, and I thought that Beethoven Pastoral is precisely about the harmony of the world and harmony of man with nature, and between every inhabitant of this world. And our dear friend, most importantly, our dear friend Tan Dun. We did many, many things with him in the past. So the fact that he wrote two pieces for us on this tour that we give the world premiere here is very, very emotional. And I believe, you know, when you put Beethoven and Tan's music together in a program, that already shows a certain message.
Right.
All of this together with a Chinese singer and a Chinese pianist. I think this variety, this is what I want people to retain, that actually the Philadelphia Orchestra sound is still alive, and we can also define the sound of the orchestra with the new music that we present to the world.
Some say it's so hard to communicate across cultures. I guess you just haven't watched a performance by Philadelphia Orchestra.
Yeah, well, you said it. I think we do our little contribution. Very with humility, we try to offer our contribution to the world to be a better place for everyone and understand each other.
Better place for everyone. Yannick, the music director of the Philadelphia Orchestra, one of the best of his generation in the world. After our talk, he and the Philadelphia Orchestra, one of the best of the world, travel around China for almost 2 weeks, one concert at a time, one music exchange at a time. While they're already on their way home, we want to pay tribute to them in this program. It is also a tribute to many who are working hard and devoted themselves to friendship and music between China and the United States and beyond. Where music fails, where words fails, music starts. That was believed to be said by Hans Christian Andersen. But as we know, music is not just the alternative, but a key to opening hearts and embracing the best of the world. And with that, we're coming to the end of this special edition. Let the Music Play, our exclusive interview with the Philadelphia Orchestra during their China tour. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, you can visit our website. Just type in World Insight CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again next time for more insight across China and around the world. Good night.